Okay, we're going to move into another section of the video now that is primarily made for sport shooters and people who shoot birds in flight or birders. These make up a huge group of people who faithfully follow me on YouTube and in my SONY Alpha Sports Facebook private group. This new zoom is actually on par with my favorite lenses, the 400 and 600 GM, the 20G, the 35 GM, and the 50 GM. These lenses all share something in common with the new 7200 G Master 2 lens. They all have dual XD linear autofocus motor systems. And that's Sony for 4 motors split into 2 sets of lenses independent of each other in the middle part of the lens. The pecking order of awesome AF in the Sony system at present is number 1, dual XD linear motors, number 2, XD linear AF, and then it goes down from there to double linear AF and linear AF. So first, the dual XD linear AF motor systems are in the 7200 GM2 lens. They're in the 50 GM, the 35 GM, the 20G lens, the 600 f4 GM, and the 400 2.8 GM. The XD linear AF motors, which means there's 2 motors instead of 4, are in the original 7200 2.8 GM lens. They're in the 135 GM, the 12 to 24 GM, and the brand new 14mm 1.8 GM. Imagine if they made a 135 with dual XD linear motors. I can't even imagine because that thing is fast as it is. For your information, the direct drive supersonic wave motor is in the 200 to 600 and the 100 to 400. I have no clue what all that means, but they both work really well for sports, but probably not as fast as this guy or as accurate. Back to the lens at hand. The first thing I shot was NCAA volleyball, which is fast. If I could find the best action in time, the lens was stellar. I went for risky first and shot about 4 feet off the floor right next to the side of the gym floor. Sitting next to the court is a pretty tight for a long zoom, but I made some frames. In between sets, I walked to the other side of the court and went up into the stands. Here I began to punch in and out with the Alpha 1 as I was now further away from the action, and I could get to 300mm just by pressing the focus hold button that I've retasked for that purpose. If there's one thing you remember about this video, it might be good to make notes right now. One of the most important attributes of the new 7200 2.8 G Master Mark II is the fact that it can walk and chew gum at the same time. Now, what do I mean by this? If I'm honest, the original G Master version never really allowed me to zoom and focus at the same time very well. It seemed like it could do only one or the other, and so I did what a lot of you have probably been doing for a while, where I would zoom and then autofocus and then shoot and then rezoom and then focus and shoot and repeat. You really saw this on running backs coming towards you when they got close, and I saw it happen at weddings where the brides would practically run down the aisle after the ceremony was over. I learned to pace myself and to plan my zooms. No more. You don't get time in volleyball to plan anything. I love this feature most about this new 7200 G Master Mark II lens. Because this feature involves not missing moments or pictures, it makes it incredibly valuable. Next up, I went to an NCAA women's soccer game. I was shooting the 600 G Master at the same time with another A1, but I forced myself to shoot this lens with no teleconverter. Even without the teleconverter, I was able to punch in anytime I wanted and get the field of view of a 300mm and still have 21 megapixel file left over. I'm a bit of a long glass snob, but I have to admit, when they got close, I was able to get really nice pictures with this zoom. The funny thing that happened going from the women's game to the men's game, the more I stood out there, the more sunburn I got. But that's for another discussion. This new zoom is phenomenal. It produces great images in my favorite backlit and frontlit light 2 games. Next, I headed to the Knoxville Zoo just to see what I could do there with a 2X attached to the new lens. It was here that I discovered the 2X is a much better piece of gear than even I thought at first. The 2X was something I used a lot with the 400 GM when I first got it, but once the 600 GM came out, I almost never used it anymore. I always used it to make the 400 2.8 get to 500, 800 5.6. The Sony 2X is fantastic on this new 7200 G Master Mark II. I think the combination is great. I also think that the 7200 G Master Mark II will prove to autofocus faster than the 200 to 600 and the 100 to 400 GM with the 1.4 converter attached, and maybe even with the 2X attached. I'm not sure about that, but it's quick. But the 70-200 G Master 2 is a dream when paired up with a 1.4. It's like it's not even there. For those that shoot birds in flight, the lightweight nature of this new lens, with it being so friendly and fast with teleconverters, makes it an easy choice. Also, man, do flowers move fast when it's windy. Holy crap, I had no idea. Next, I shot images of an NCAA basketball team for their media guide pics. The guys were great and had a lot of fun and got into the shoot. I shot simulated action with 3 Westcott FJ400 strobes with sport reflectors, all set to the 6 power setting, which gave me a flash duration on all of them of 5,000th of a second. All these images were shot wide open at 2.8 as I wanted to see how sharp the lens was at wide open and what it did to the backgrounds. I was really happy with the results, especially when you consider I had the coach shut off the lights in the practice gym where I was shooting, so I was shooting basically in the dark. The only illumination coming into the gym I was in was bleeding over from the other side of the back of the bleachers on the other side. So think about a wall running along the side of a basketball court that's about 16 feet high. So pretty much dark. The Alpha 1 and the new lens just tracked everything, and it had no failures whatsoever. High school football was the next challenge, and the new lens didn't disappoint. Because it was so lightweight and small compared to the 400 GM, I could shoot the release of the ball by the quarterback and still pick up the receiver in the end zone and practically nail every frame. I have lots of frames of the ball in the air. I wish I was shooting this vertically, but I was shooting for you, and after all, verticals don't fit into YouTube very well. So after shooting all those sports, I was ready for something different, so I loaded my motorcycle onto a small trailer and I drove out to Colorado. I hit the state right in time for peak fall color, at least at the elevation I was at, which ranged from 6,000 to 10,000 feet. These were all shot around the Steamboat area. This is not something I typically shoot, but the color was awesome, and it really captured my attention. I rode around for a full 2 days on the motorcycle to make images and stopped the bike only when I couldn't stand not to make a picture. I found the sign entering the state of Colorado to be accurate. It says, "Welcome to colorful Colorado." It certainly was. If you haven't figured out by now, I am an actual professional sports photographer. I've been shooting for almost 35 years as a full-time pro. This is not a sideline for me. I was really out west to shoot a wedding in Steamboat Springs. So here are a few images of that I shot with the 70-200 2.8 G Master 2 from that experience. First, I was shooting all day with a 24-105 on my right and the new lens on my left side on my Black Rapid system. I worked like that all day, and the weight is so easily distributed by the Black Rapid strap that it hangs totally horizontal to the ground. So this lens is no longer front heavy like the old 70-200 GM. After many hours of shooting, my back didn't hurt much at all because it's so much lighter as well. So I hope that some of the engineers watching this will see this, that I'm noticing all these things, because the next time I see you guys, the beer's on me. If the world ever gets back to normal, that is. Last, I gave a talk in Rapid City, South Dakota last Thursday with all my new friends from the PSA, or the Photographic Society of America. I stole aboard a charter bus that they were going to go to the Badlands with, and someone didn't show up, so I got the seat. While these images are maybe mostly about the Alpha 1 sensor, the tiny detail of the distant mountains are lens relevant. Also, the ability for any lens to shoot directly into the setting sun and resolve the star by itself by its round edges is impressive. I was the lone shooter without a tripod, choosing to shoot up high shutter speeds and with the 1.4 attached. I dig the results. My last shoots were portraits of two kinds of people, one was at the wedding I shot, and the second was a model hired by Westcott at the Rapid City PSA conference. I couldn't shoot with all the people there, and the girl probably thought that I was a weirdo demanding to shoot her alone after the studio times had ended. I couldn't take the risk of having one of the sharp-eyed, steely-eyed, camera-toting PSA folks spotting the new lens, especially after I declared that the DSLR was dead in my talk the night before. As always, I appreciate the patience of those who agreed to allow me to test cameras and glass. Thank you all. I like where Sony's going lately with lens development. All of their most recent lenses are getting the new dual XD linear AF motors. And make sure you take note of the 20mm 1.8G lens, which also has it. It's not just for GMs. Don't get me wrong, Sony, you're not off the hook. I still want my 300-2.8 GM and my 300 f4 G lens. But this is a killer step in the right direction. The big question is maybe, should you switch? If you shoot sports or birds in flight, I'd say hell yes. If you're a portrait shooter or you shoot product or other things that don't move, like real estate, that's up to you. The lens is sharper for sure, but unless you have the Alpha 1 or the A7R Mark IV, you may not be able to see the difference. But if you want only the best, then you should consider it. One of the greatest benefits of this lens will be totally lost on Sony, and that is that there will be a bunch of 70-200mm G Master lenses for sale in the used market starting this week in October, and then a whole bunch in December when they start actually delivering these bad boys. This new supply of an excellent and proven lens into the used marketplace will mean a whole new crop of sports shooters will be able to afford to buy a used 70-200 GM and either an A9 or an A9 II with a grip. It will never be easier to start shooting for the first time at 20 frames per second with no blackout and no distortion from the sensor. You know, the speedy 120 frame per second EVF is also a big deal on A9, A9 II, and it's even faster on the Alpha 1. Some of you out there will decide it's time to go mirrorless now, and with used gear rather than waiting for the Z9 and the R3, which are still in the ether. Last thing I want to say about all this video is that I am an artisan of imagery from Sony. Sony sent me this lens and let me shoot it for the better part of a month, which I very much appreciate. But my experience with it and my words are my own. They don't tell me what to shoot or what to write or what to say. That's all me. I still want a 300 prime though. You decide if this little bugger is worth upgrading to you if you're already in the Sony family, or if it's time to finally realize that denial is not just a river in Egypt. Come on, the water's fine. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to. I'm Pat Murphy-Racey, Sony Artisan of Imagery.